Person for the World Health Organization. Well, listening to that is Dr. Sander van der Linden, a specialist in social psychology at the University of Cambridge. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the BBC News channel. I wonder what you make as you listen to the WHO as I was doing there. Do you think it is realistic to get this singular message around face masks across to whole populations?
Well, I think what we need is a very clear communication strategy. As I've said before, the pandemic is as much behavioral as it is a biological problem. And the problem of human behavior is, as the WHO pointed to, not easy to solve because people are different and people interpret evidence differently. And so we need to be very careful about how we communicate the evidence around face masks, which I can understand has been confusing for people. And so it will be a communication challenge to try to get everyone on the same page, but now that the evidence is converging and increasing towards the benefits of face masks, I think it could be part of a public awareness and public health campaign so that everyone is aware of the importance of wearing face masks indoors.
Do you think one of the challenges is that face masks are primarily about us stopping giving the virus if we have it to someone else, in that this is an act for others rather than for ourselves?
Well, actually, I think if we would frame it that way, more people would come on board. I think people primarily perhaps think about themselves and not enough about the fact that, as our colleague at the WHO was saying, that, we are all a social risk vector in a way, potentially spreading disease. And the important thing to do is not only to wear the mask to protect yourself, but in fact to protect other people who might be vulnerable and at risk. And I think as we've seen in key periods during the pandemic, especially here in the UK, people do care about other people, and that can be a powerful message that we wear the mask to protect other people, and it can actually be a symbol of national pride rather than national shame.
And I wonder what you make of the current UK government's approach to messaging, because it's coming in for a lot of criticism, but arguably as lockdown is eased, inevitably the messaging has to become more complex, has to become more nuanced, and as such is simply harder to do.
That's absolutely right. And, we've done research showing that communicating uncertainty to the public does not undermine the public trust. People are open to considering evidence. They understand that, science can't offer 100% certain answers, and we can only act on the best available evidence. And we need to have that conversation with the public openly and not treat them, in fact, as a one-rate receptacle of a particular message. And I do think it's important we start having that conversation. But at the same time, we see Boris Johnson wearing a mask, Donald Trump is wearing a mask. People in the United States have been voluntarily been wearing masks for quite some time now, or mandated because stores require it. Collectivistic cultures in Asia have been wearing masks for a long time. They recognize it's good personal hygiene, even when there isn't a pandemic, just when there's a regular flu going around. So I think increasingly we need to start changing the associations and symbols people have around the idea of wearing a mask, and be open about what we know and what we don't know.
And if you were advising the government and saying, look, we need to get certain things lined up on face masks, is one of them to reach some sort of tipping point where it becomes socially unacceptable not to wear one?
Yes. In fact, if I were to advise the government, I think the single most important point is that, we look to other people when we're uncertain about a given behavior. People look to other people. And so if everyone is wearing a mask, most people will understand that that's the socially desirable and acceptable thing to do. And in fact, there's also wisdom in these sorts of norms, that people do it for a reason. They just don't do it because there's no good reason for it. And so, the reason why people aren't wearing masks is because we only have minorities of people currently adopting the behavior. So it's not a critical mass. It's not a tipping point. We need enough people wearing the mask so that it's visible and other people join and get a critical enough mass in order to basically scale this across the population. And we need to think carefully about, there are critical questions about masks. So, for example, people have raised a concern that it could increase risk-taking behavior, that, somehow you feel invincible or gives you a false sense of security. I have not seen any empirical evidence for that claim, but it is a question that we can investigate. Conversely, wearing a mask may signal that there's a deadly virus out there and help keep us alert, in line with the government message to stay alert.
Very, very helpful. Such complex issues and decisions to be taken. Thank you very much. That's Dr. Sander van der Linden from the University of Cambridge. Now, let me just turn to some really important bit of news.